Starting today, we're going to look, for this episode of Contested, we're going to look at the Fissure, sort of the new juice that's hit the presses. It's lukewarm juice. And then we're going to take a look at some of the new MVP skins as well.
After that, we're going to be discussing Kevster joining the Los Angeles Gladiators and a new Overwatch patch just hit live. Not quite the same as the experimental, some key differences, but we'll take a look at that during the show.
I'm Avast, this is Jayne, and welcome to Contested. What's up, guys? We're once again not live from the Frontier Communication Studio in Dallas, Texas. I also realized in the intro I said MVP skins. There's only one skin. There's only a singular skin, but I don't know why I said the skins, so they're having multiple. But yes, we're once again not live from our studio. Maybe in the future, hopefully, we're working towards it. There's been many barriers, and we're getting back there slowly but surely. So we're still here, comfortable in our homes. We still have our nice backdrops behind us.
The end is in sight, though. We were almost going to have today's episode in the studio. Almost just had a little bit of a tech difficulty because, of course, when we do go back to the studio, we want to make sure that we can keep it going with the live format. We really enjoy that format, so we're not going to kind of go back to that pre-recorded format. So maybe this Thursday, and if not, looking to do it next week. But soon, my friends, soon we will be back in the studio and be able to do a lot more of the stuff that we were planning since the very beginning of the year.
Yeah, hopefully we can have some of those tools available to us, because it's just our humble abodes that we are working with right now. And then obviously there's nothing wrong with that, but we would like to have more, get flashier, get more creative, get crazier, get whatever other adjectives we'll throw in there. Just think of your own adjectives and we'll put them there. Vapid.
Vapid. One of the other interesting things that we are looking to do is having unscheduled episodes as well. So if breaking news happens, we're going to look to try and go live right away to talk about it, instead of having to force you guys to wait for a Tuesday or Thursday episode show as well. So look forward to that coming to you in the near future as well. But let's get right into the main part of the show, starting off with, as you said during the intro, we finally have the tiniest bit of development in terms of not just the Fissure situation, but also the Vancouver Titans situation. So there's a lot of things that are not known about what happened between the fallout of the former Runaway players as well as the Vancouver Titans organization. However, one of the big kind of questions that came up is that after the Runaway roster departed the Vancouver Titans, Fissure was also released as well. Now, one of the things that Fissure said is that he was not released in a mutual fashion, that he did want to stay on with the team, and that they just released him anyway. However, the Overwatch League office came out with a statement saying that the Vancouver Titans did in fact release Fissure for cause, which is now turning this situation into a bit of a he said, she said situation.
And I poorly said it in the beginning, because we once again had our issue with words that we do on the show, Jayne, where, I said unprecedented, instead of unprecedented. Yep. But it's a situation that hasn't been seen in the league itself before, of a player publicly saying their contract was released and they were not paid against their will. And the reason I made a big stink about this, I got very stinky. On Twitter over this. It's super stink. And I was like, this has to be looked at, was because if especially since we're in a time of crisis, right? So you would think that on average, a league structure tends to favor owners anyways, because that's sort of the point of a league structure. Yes. Is that it's supposed to help owners, which isn't inherently a bad thing, but obviously those interests can clash pretty heavily with player interests and such. And now that we're in a pretty bad time in terms of all esports with COVID, and we've had this downturn, and then Titans had also an extraordinary circumstance at their own roster on top of everything else, you would think that maybe, there could be a problem where if Fissure is causing an issue and they want to get rid of him, and he doesn't want to breach his contract, he wants to stay with them, they come up with reasons like, let's get him out of there. Let's peace out. Yeah. And I think that's a really big problem for the league, because one of the major advantages the league brings as well is that it gives extra player protections, which generally aren't seen in esports. Like, as many orgs would love to tell you, like, yeah, we're always going to have your best interest at heart, and we're always going to try to keep you. And many do try to do that, because it's not a business that's always looking to get rid of players and just squeeze them out like sponges. But the reality is that there's always going to be a conflict of interest there. And I do think that the league protections offered are a very important thing with the Overwatch League and what they give to players. So if a player is just released and they didn't want to be released and they don't get paid out, that turns the entire system on its head. And they had a writer it was Kevin _ hit on Twitter was the writer, and he worked, I think it was for the Esports Observer, and he reached out to the league office, and they said he was released, terminated, ellipses, for cause. Very dramatic there. But I will say that's like it satisfies me in one way, Jayne. It satisfies me because at least there's been a statement now of like, okay, someone has said they've been released for cause, so it's a breach of contract. And I'm of the opinion that, and I also made this clear when I initially tweeted about it, is like Fissure very well could have breached contract. Like that's extremely
possible. It's entirely possible.
Extremely possible
now.
It's entirely possible. Pull it up. I mean, like it's very, very possible that he could breach contract. But I just wanted to get an initial statement. But it doesn't necessarily mean we should always believe it, right? Like we don't have any more.
I mean, in the same way that we shouldn't automatically believe Fissure, we also shouldn't automatically believe the Vancouver Titans. The likelihood that somebody is maybe not directly lying but distorting the truth is pretty evident here. And you're talking about the Overwatch League structure and how a lot of these player protections are in the league in that regard. But at the same time, the franchising system and the much more regulated ecosystem that Activision Blizzard has put in place, one of those reasons is not just for the player protections. In fact, I would almost argue that player protections are a secondary consideration. The primary consideration is going to be protecting these organizations, the organizations that actually have the money. When Activision Blizzard is a business, they're not looking at Fissure. Fissure's not the guy who's going to be dropping, double-digit millions on franchise spots. Groups like the Vancouver Titans and their VC backers are the ones who are going to do that. And it was really hard in order to convince organizations like the organizations that have purchased Overwatch League teams to get on board with this sort of thing. They needed protections, they needed guarantees. As it happened in the CSGO esports ecosystem quite a bit, whenever one team kind of just started getting popular, somebody coming on like a Russian steel magnet or something and be like, I'm just going to buy your team, and there's nothing you can do about it. Like you have no contracts, you have no protections, and that was a problem in previous esports, notably CSGO. So the fact that there is a lot more regulation in this, it's kind of like some of these things are protecting players, but they are more so protecting the actual organizations themselves. And if there is some sort of like regulation, it's not the first time that we've seen league office rules change. We've saw them change, maybe coincidentally, maybe specifically to help the Boston Uprising. We've seen things like player caps change from 8 to 7. We've seen contracts, new rules be introduced in the way of 14-day contracts. A lot of these things help quite a few things, but they are all like the primary interest is going to be to the ownership groups, the teams themselves. So personally, I am going to be putting a little bit more skepticism into the Vancouver Titans and the Overwatch League office side of things. They don't say what the cause is, but they can just say that, and you have nothing to do to argue against it. I'm not sure what the employment law is for Vancouver. It could be at will, but there's still the league office rules that these organizations have to abide by being part of the Overwatch League.
Yeah, and that's just something that I raised my stink. We got a statement, and unless Fissure himself or another article comes out saying like there was clear foul play, there's really nothing more that can be like definitively said by any means. I'm just of the opinion that based off everything I've heard, it seemed like there were definite problems with the roster and clear that the team and the organization were not going to come to an agreement. But it seemed like Fissure was one of the people that actually was looking to make some concessions and still try to work with them. But it almost as if the organization was like, well, we could do that, but you're really expensive and it doesn't fit in our new rebuilding plan. So it's way easier just to find a bullshit excuse to get rid of you. Yeah, and then not pay you out, which is the real problem, I think. I don't have a problem if they want to get rid of them. It's just not pay you out.
And even if the justification is flimsy, right? Even if you're kind of like, Fissure was terminated for this explicit reason. If Fissure says that, no, I didn't do that or something, that's not an argument that can be settled anything other than a court of law. And pursuing that is going to be extremely expensive. So this was another argument that I raised during the initial discussion of this scandal, was basically that, the Vancouver Titans also have a little bit of protection. It's like, beyond just what the letter of the law is or what the letters of agreements are, but laws are only as powerful as your ability to enforce them. So unless somebody's gonna go after the Vancouver Titans in order to try and get some like compensation for like,
and it's probably not going to be Fissure because he's closed all of his social media accounts. Like, they can't even reach back out to him. Like, so right now we're just on Fissure watch to see if he suddenly triumphantly returns to say something else. Like, I'm on the Widow's Wharf, like waiting, looking out to the sea for Fissure. Like, there's really no confirmation that anything's going to happen, but it's just something that I think we should keep the eye on because it's very important for us as individuals and as a league to make sure that we don't let crises allow, especially financial crisis, allow orgs to sort of step on player rights. And yeah, people's gonna bring up the unions, but we've talked about this, Jayne.
Oh my God, we've talked about this
so many times. It's like hero pools at this point. Like I was in the initial discussion for the players union. It's just not gonna happen unless the players themselves really want it to happen. And there's no other discussion to be had. That's it.
Yeah,
that's all there is to it.
Yeah, I don't know what else. I really, really don't want to touch the union discussion again. We should just have like an exclamation mark union commander. Yeah, because we did actually have like a really long, in-depth explanation about why unions aren't going to happen in the Overwatch League, barring extraordinary circumstances.
Yeah, it requires very much like everyone to get together and say like sure, but then it's just too much. It's too much. We're gonna go down the rabbit hole again, Jayne. We're gonna go down.
Avoid. It's a trap. Don't touch it. No.
Yeah,
but
it's just tough.
Moving away from the absolute, I don't even know what you call it. It's vortex.
Ambiguity.
You know what? I am literally going to go on Amazon and buy a little bell that I can just ring for our word of the day.
I agree.
During the episode.
I want a gong.
Ding, 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 ding. Today's word of the day, ladies and gentlemen, is ambiguity.
We can both get our own different like alerts, like you can have a bell and I can have a gong, and the gong can be when we, what would I don't know what the gong be. Maybe when we say a word wrong, I'll hit that gong 24/7 and that gong will be going. Like I would hit that word because my word not too good.
I feel like I'm gonna comparing my bell to your gong is gonna be very emasculating, but you know what? You're just gonna have to deal with it, I guess.
Yeah, well, the gong is just my truck nuts version of, that's just my truck nuts for the show. Is the missaid word gong.
Well, until we have those props, let's move on to the next topic. That was probably the worst segue I've ever done. Ham-fisted, but we'll go with it. Kevster.
Hey, just like removing Fissure.
Yeah,
very ham-fisted.
See, 10 out.
We can always type it, but Kevster. Yeah. What were we going with that?
He got signed to the Los Angeles Gladiators.
Yeah.
Hooray.
Hooray. I mean, overall, there's a saying that we say in the Avast stream at times. We've heard the term cracked, but we've evolved that to tarred out. We call that black tar heroined out, okay? And that's what Kevster is.
What?
He's the next level above cracked, okay?
I think I'm going to have to consult with the censors on that one.
Do we? Is heroin outside?
I have no idea. I'm just messing with you. I'm sure we're fine.
Either way, I'm sorry, everyone else that's in everyone else, but the regardless is that Kevster is really, really good, and people are pretty hyped for him. And he joined the Gladiators, was not a team that I was expecting in terms of like need,
Yeah. I think that's a great way of putting it. The Gladiators, like they've got Birdring, they've got Mirror, they've got Jaru. So Kevster replacing Jaru maybe, but I really don't see them. Like Kevster's hero pool doesn't really overlap with Mirror, and Birdring just seems too good to replace. So
especially recently, Birdring has been extremely good.
He's been extremely good.
Yeah, and it allows them, because especially since we've seen a lot of Ash Tracer, it allows them to play those comps much more effectively. So it's not like it's a bad pickup by any means, right? It's just one that was unexpected because there was a lot of teams that could have used Kevster, but Kevster himself has publicly stated he's turned down offers before. And I know for a fact that Gladiators is generally pretty fair with their offers, and DPay is not at all hesitant, especially now that he has like a GM/head coach role at the same time within the Gladiators organization, that he's not afraid to just drop mad quid, mad dollar, mad squib upon players and put them in. And
this will also be really interesting to see. I also think it's just kind of interesting. There's two interesting things here. So many interesting things that are interesting. The first one being that Jaru was also picked up from Team Envy, and Kevster, I think most notably, comes from Team Doge, which is formerly Team Envy. So, but I'm not sure how much of an upgrade Kevster really is over Jaru. You know, he's absolutely been smashing it in contenders, like all of Team Doge has. And this is an additional kind of, yes, it is an additional criticism of the Vancouver Titans, the way the Vancouver Titans, they had some pretty good opportunities to pick some great players and teams up from contenders and then just absolutely messed it up. And this really kind of diluted the argument about how good Tier 2 players really are, specifically and most notably how good American Tier 2 players are. This is something that John Galt has actually been in a lot of hot water for recently, where people have been kind of going after him for his opinions that, you know, Tier 2 players like really aren't that good. Maybe they'd be able to compete with like the bottom 5 or something, where, you know,
which is an outrageous claim, by the way. Like, no, how is that? Like, how I you know, the thing is like there's definitely a counterculture within Tier 2, and that doesn't mean Tier 2 is bad, but if you dare say things that like Tier 2 isn't somehow just as good as the top Overwatch League teams, or they aren't, like, and that doesn't mean that players can't be good or coaches can't be good from Tier 2. It just means that on average they're probably not as good, like collectively as a unit, which is a perfectly fair assessment. And if they are better than them, then that just like is more of a self-serving point, I think, that like, you know, people want to put forth the argument that somehow Tier 2 is collectively better than like half of the Overwatch League, which is ridiculous. A ridiculous statement, especially when you get to like the North American and European side.
If you're a player who wants to play in the Overwatch League, you kind of have to believe that, don't you?
Yeah.
Right? If you don't believe that you can kick it with the rest of the Overwatch League players, then how can you really justify being picked up to play on an Overwatch League team that isn't like the very bottom sort of thing? So, you know, I think it's mix of kind of like, you know, confidence in their ability, as well as it's almost like a necessity, where if you don't believe those things and you're in Tier 2, like if you don't believe that you can kick it with the best players in the league, then why would a league team hire you? So I think there's a little bit of kind of like marketing to it, and also the fact where it's like for anybody in the Overwatch League, it's just kind of like, if you say like, you know, no, contenders sucks, it's like it's punching down, really, and then they get to punch back up and get some more attention and more eyes on it. It gives them a better chance of getting noticed and getting hired, especially if people, you know, just get the talking point in their head where, oh, this guy's really good, even though like the 90% of the people saying that had never watched the games at all. So it's
argument is more of just as a team collective. It's never been about individual players, right? There are plenty of great players that are obviously going to be probably better or just as good as top Overwatch League players. It's just people try to put forward the argument like this contenders team could beat half of the Overwatch, and he's like, well, that seems unfounded. That seems very
you can just like it's just like preseason rankings, right? And you can say these things and never be proven wrong.
Yeah, you could just say it, and there's like
risk-free statement,
and that's why it's also ridiculous that I feel like I don't really agree with all of John Galt's coaching decisions or his philosophies, but it was ridiculous that John Galt goes so much flame for that statement, because it's like, yeah, the best team in North America can be as good as the bottom 5 Overwatch League team, the teams that have millions of dollars of investment in them, and it's like, and you have essentially none. It's like, wow, that's if you think about it, relatively decent praise, and definitely already saying that you are Overwatch League level. But because he didn't come out and just say like immediately like Team Doge would annihilate everyone and then erase their atoms from existence with their gaming prodigy skills in this multi-million-dollar league while they have a Doge icon profile picture. It's outrage. I'm outraged. It's like, no, like that's an unreasonable thing to say, especially when we have the wider context of the ecosystem of like, you know, obviously no one is really going to put North American contenders on quite the same tier as Korean contenders. Or other, you know, it's just not going to be. It's just ridiculous.
I think one of my favorite things about the whole situation is that John Galt actually like took all of this kind of criticism not just as like posturing or grandstand, but he took it like really seriously and actually started reviewing some of Team Doge's games to actually try and be like, yeah, you're better than this team, but like it was really kind of like props to him for taking it as seriously as he did.
I guess take
the Tier 2 guys and review some of their games, but
I guess why he didn't need to, because like what's gonna happen? He's gonna have like 20 angry people on Twitter that are mad at him. Like, you know, it's like it's ridiculous that it really was taking that seriously. I feel
just like a sub narrative, I guess, that's happening in the Overwatch community this week. But you know, the like Team Doge, really good team. They absolutely utterly dominated North American contenders. They dropped one map the entire playoff bracket. They 3-0'd everybody up to the finals, and then they won the finals 4-1. And every single person on Team Doge is over 18 except for OG.
OG, yeah.
So if you find a replacement main sport, assuming that OG isn't like the critical backbone putting the entire team together, you got to think that any kind of teams that are looking for an upgrade, the Vancouver Titans have already shot their shot, but really other than that, this is a team that if you're looking for an upgrade, I assume that the Los Angeles Gladiators are not the only organization looking to pick up members of Team Doge. Kevster himself has said that he's had offers from multiple other Overwatch League teams that he has turned down. So you got
OG recently said that he was sad that on Twitter, OG publicly posted that because of his age, like he's sad to watch the rest of Team Doge sort of split apart, which seemed to imply that the rest of the team is also, at least several other members are probably going to be going somewhere else as well, whether it be Contenders or Overwatch League. Which isn't surprising.
You don't put performances like that up and then stay together as a roster, like unless you're the Vancouver Titans and get bought out for a ridiculous amount by a VC firm in Vancouver. But really, any team that has done this well has almost immediately been broken apart. So rip to Team Doge, they had a good run, but I think other than like Second Wind did it for a little while where they were constantly able to rebuild really powerful rosters, but like having franchises or dynasties in Contenders that actually kind of last season to season after kind of core members get picked up, it's way rarer than I would say in the Overwatch League, where you do see these things where kind of franchises do have more or less consistent performances somewhere in the power rankings.
I think an important part to think about Kevster too is like, where does this put Gladiators now, right? If Kevster is truly this sort of almost just prophet in his heyday type of, or like people are comparing him to like, this is going to be a top 5 hit scan player in Overwatch League is what people are saying. Obviously, it remains to be seen. I'm of the opinion that we should take dominant contender performances seriously, but we shouldn't immediately say like, yes, guaranteed, like could be an insane player, like top 5 in their role. But I do think that Kevster does fill some holes for them, because sure, Jaru's great, but Jaru's never been a hit scan player, right? Mirror, not traditionally. Mirror can play Tracer, but not necessarily traditionally a hit scan player. Always been much more of a flex player as well, similar to Jaru. So I do think that with how we've seen the meta shake up a bit, the addition of Kevster to run both Kevster and Birdring makes the DPS line for Gladiators a lot scarier, and it does make them more consistent in times where they want to be running like Tracer Ash or double hit scan. And I do think this is going to be a really nasty pickup for them, but there's still the issue of like, what about the rest of the roster? Like they have great moments, but they still seem to lack like coordination at times. Like some people wanted to point towards Mirror as it being an issue because he was too one-dimensional, which I think is like fair, because Mirror has shown like really good displays on certain heroes like Doom, but has been much more lackluster on other heroes like Echo at times.
And
at the same time, remain to see what's going to be the result.
At the same time, one of the criticisms that we had of like playing the Birdring Mirror matchup was the fact that both of those players demand quite a few resources. They are players that work best when they're coordinating really with the team and getting very well supported. They're not kind of this more, standalone or lone wolf type of player or anything like that. So yes, Kevster, Jaru can play hit scan. A lot of these guys are very flexible. Like the list of heroes that they have played throughout the metas as it's shifted through Contenders is quite extensively. More recently, Kevster is going to be more of a hit scan specialist. But like Jaru, no slouch at it. Mirror can definitely play a mean Widowmaker as well. I'm not sure about at the Overwatch League level. Has he played Widow in the Overwatch League?
Not in the Overwatch League, no.
No, but he did play.
Birdring's been playing Widow for Gladiators, so which makes sense. And also, someone asked in chat, how is Kevster's mental? Does he boom easily? Which is a great question, because mental is something that how you slot into a team is a very important part, and it's how we've discussed on the show. How I've really changed my philosophy, I feel, to teams where I'm looking a lot more towards how a staff is shaping a squad over the season versus just the pure players added now. Because I feel like we've gotten around to that point where enough talent has matriculated into the staff level. Was that like a bell moment when I say matriculate?
We already rang it today.
But I do think it's something important, and we have seen Gladiators struggle with some fundamental things. Even though DPay can come out and be like, here's, he can make his feeding is good video, which is like fine, that's definitely true. But like, if you can be as theoretical as you want, but if you can never execute it, then I'm like, well, I could also, what was that copy pasta from like tier 2? It was like tier 3 Overwatch. It was like, I built a fusion reactor in my room or something. Like I could do that theoretically, but I can't. So like, it's useless to me. Like, someone find me that copy pasta and put it in chat. It's a really funny copy pasta. I have
never even heard of it. So
it's really funny. There's some classic ones up there, right up there with like Scion Esports. So the guy's like, I make $5K a month, and who are you? Like,
that one's great.
That one's good too, right?
Yeah.
I don't remember the exact wording of it, but the point is that theory is great, but we have to see how it actually happens in practice. Kevster, especially if he doesn't slot into the team very well, or if they still can't fix some of their fundamental problems, doesn't necessarily guarantee Gladiators like shoots up the rankings at all.
No, not at all. Now, one of the more divisive things that I would say happened this week, maybe other than Spice's casting during the Overwatch League, was that they released Sinatra's MVP skin. Now, I'm sure we have an image of that we can show you if you have not seen Sinatra's.
If not,
MVP
check
skin.
my tweet. My tweet for us going live. That's pretty similar to the actual skin itself. Would be that.
But yeah, so they released the Alien Zarya skin for Sinatraa himself, and there have been, I suppose, mixed reactions, including Sinatra's only. I love it in the video where they're releasing it and they're showing it to Sinatraa the first time with the two art directors. And so one of Sinatra's comments is, it's definitely one of the best Zarya skins.
But that's just Sinatraa. Sinatra's not a wordsmith, okay?
No,
if you've talked to he's not a wordsmith. J1 he's a fragger first and he speaks second. He's not like a... And also, people were like, wow, he didn't seem very excited. But it's like, he's not very emphatic at times.
Have you ever seen him stream? Like,
he's sometimes very
deadpan. He's a chill dude, just vibing.
That's his thing. That's his thing. He's not great at expressing those.
We just don't understand his
emotions.
alien ways of expressing himself, right?
Oh, there's the copy pasta. Avast, I have 5 gold medals, and I built a fusion reactor in my bedroom at 17. I am now working at an MIT-based fusion energy company that will save the world. But go off. This is in response to like Moira getting nerfed, by the way, or something. Like this is what that is from. Like that was such a good copy pasta.
But go off. Damn, I like that. Holy.
It's like, I'm Tony Stark and you're speaking to me. But still, besides the point.
Yeah. So I think before I say what I think about this skin, what do you think about this skin?
Yeah, I mean,
that's great.
I mean, the thing is like the reality is like I don't think the skin is incredible necessarily.
No.
My outrage of it was people were like, there were actual Pico brains, like straight up had to pull up the microscope to see like the folds on their cranium because of the fact that they were somehow like, this guy doesn't even play Overwatch anymore. Why does he get a skin? Wow, not honoring Overwatch content creators. F you, Blizzard. F you. And it's like, what the no, like this guy won the Overwatch League. He is an MVP candidate. He won World Cup. He's a staple like of one of the best teams in Overwatch League.
And he's a traitor.
Overwatch. Like he absolutely deserves. Like, imagine a universe where the inverse happens, and then Blizzard's like, actually, Sinatraa, no, you won't be getting your skin because you went to Riot. We don't like that one bit. And they just say like, and in fact, they released an MVP skin, but it's just a big butthole, and it's called Sinatraa skin. Okay, like no one wouldn't like that. Like that would be, people would somehow be interpreting that just as badly. Like there is no winning here, but there is one winning play, which is just release the damn skin.
Yeah,
he earned the skin.
Look at this skin. Okay, so beyond the situation around releasing the skin, let's talk about the skin itself. Now, I don't like this skin. I'm just going to say straight up, don't like the skin. I got 2 main reasons I don't like the skin. First of all, it looks straight out of MIB. And I think they actually said that. They were like, it looks like a Hollywood alien or something. So that makes it like more of an MIB skin than a Sinatraa skin. Like I don't really see much of Sinatra's personality coming out in the skin. Not anything compared.
It was just alien based. That was it.
It was just alien based.
Just alien based. Yeah.
Yeah. The other thing is that like the whole alien thing, at least it's paired with the emo, the gray men sort of thing. I was expecting sort of that same sort of stylistic representation of it, but it's a skin that is, I suppose, dedicated to Sinatraa, but I don't really see anything other than like, yes, it's an alien, and it's a very like stylized Hollywood alien that already exists. Like it takes inspiration from something that's not Sinatraa. So that's what I think about the skin. I don't like it very much. I definitely don't think it's the worst skin in the world, but it doesn't really seem like
I would have preferred where
Sinatraa.
they like make like a skin that was somehow honoring him honoring like liking thirst pics on Twitter and him responding, so what? I don't know how they would have done it, but I think that would have been my favorite Sinatraa skin moment, is like somehow like a picture that memorializes like the fact that immortalizes the so what moment. That's what have been my ideal Sinatraa skin, because I think that was the most alpha gaming move of all time, was the so what. But we're not going to get that, obviously.
No, I don't even know where to take that. But
I don't know. It's a tough theme. It's a tough theme.
I mean, it took them 10 months. I'm sure they could have spent 10 months to at least somewhat capture that essence of just alpha in the skin creation. But no, we got a MIB knockoff, and that's the skin. Yeah, one of the best.
But that's really it. That's all my complaints were. It wasn't about the skin itself. It was just the fact people complaining that the Sinatraa didn't deserve the skin, as if Blizzard or Overwatch League was wrong to release the skin for Sinatraa, which is like so unbelievably dumb that I felt my very essence like folding within itself like a neutron star as I witnessed it. Like I couldn't even believe how dumb the take was. And then I had some guy literally liking his tweets in response to me saying they don't need it. This is dumb. The artists need to be making the game balance better. Like these are two separate departments. They're not even doing the same thing. They do entirely different things. You
make it sound like it's very fun to troll you. I should make a few Twitter alts and have some
That's
fun.
right. I want you to harass me daily. What would really get me going is if you like your own tweets.
I'm just going to throw bad takes in your general direction and then like them repeatedly.
That's what really gets me more than anything else is liking your own tweet. Who likes their own tweet?
You know, ironically, that is something that I always did during my streams, like make comments on things like YouTube or Twitter and then like them.
Like them? Well, then this is terrible. That's a terrible move, I think. It's a faux pas. It is a faux pas.
It is not. It is absolutely not. It's just confidence, and I'm really truly inspired by Bambi. You know, if you don't like what you're saying, why are you saying it? So you know, I should just like everything that I put out there. Self-love, man. Self-love.
You know, I when I hear that
it's okay to love yourself.
When I hear that perspective, it does change it a bit, but it changes what I'm thinking, but it doesn't make it any better. It doesn't make it any better for me. It's still...
We will agree to disagree. I will continue to troll you on my alts by liking
all the tweets that get posted. Just singular likes from the person that posts them. But that's all we had to really say about the skin. It was but I was just pissed that people were somehow saying that it wasn't worthy.
And I just don't think it's a good skin. You know what?
Yeah, I mean it's not as good as Jonak's skin. Like I think we can all agree it wasn't as good as Jonak's skin. Like that's fair.
Yeah. Yeah, it's always hard to one up themselves, and it's not like the Blizzard art team has had, you know, no shortage of home runs. They've done a lot of good work. I don't think that it's too hard to say that they didn't really knock this one out of the park. Yay, it's a skin. It doesn't completely suck ass. It's not great though. So,
well done.
Yeah,
well done, everybody.
Clap, clap, clap.
Firm handshakes all around. Firm handshakes all around.
Maybe they just purposely made the skin a little bit less impressive. It's not that they weren't going to release it because he went to ride. It's just like
like a hate redesign.
It's just like let's make his skin slightly worse.
It's like we're just gonna like blur the polygons a bit and we're gonna make it really dumb.
Thing ever.
It's like there's no god rays on this skin. Yeah, we're gonna get rid of those.
Just make it when you actually load into a game, her movement speed is like 5% slower, just enough that people don't notice, but it has a performance impact.
Each time you pick the skin, you load to the game, it puts like a junk file on your hard drive, and slowly but surely it just like
slowly increases the memory leak so that you just start lagging over time.
That's Blizzard's long game that they're playing.
Yeah, I can totally see this. Definitely realistic strategies that we're coming up with here. 100%.
Well, speaking of realism and things I didn't think that were going to happen, a Genji buff finally went live, Jayne. A Genji buff finally went live. They did. They put out the patch notes today.
And it's a pretty significant one. You know, this is... I thought that maybe it was an accident at first, but thinking about it more, and especially... talking to Necros, of all people, I was talking to Necros. I was hanging out in his stream for a bit as he was playing around with the Genji changes. They've made changes in such a way that there's breakpoints that have been shifted. Now, the most notable one, I didn't consider Genji nearly as much, but Hanzo moving his Storm Arrows from 60 to 70 damage was a pretty significant buff. And I've talked about breakpoints being the main thing that causes things to just shift crazy amounts in terms of balance of power. And I think the best example of this was when they nerfed Soldier's primary fire damage from 20 to 19. That was a big deal because it meant that it always took him one more bullet to kill, even though it was only like one damage, like literally one damage reduced, 5% damage reduction. It's a breakpoint. It takes one more bullet, and that bullet always is going to be making a difference. Now, the breakpoint with the Hanzo Storm Arrows is, of course, 60 to 70 means that you can now two-shot somebody. One headshot, one body shot will kill, or just 3 body shots with Storm Arrows. So it's definitely moving much and more into kind of like the spammier side of things and the higher damage, moving him further and further away from the niche where he was, which is now more occupied by Ashe and Widowmaker. And of course, that happened because of the very drastic reduction in arrow velocity that they, that was quite a sizable nerf. There's people like Arg, for example, a Hanzo streamer who was like consistently very high in the 4000s and is now kind of dropping between Masters and low GM. It's a very sizable nerf. Hanzo One Trick's really, really struggling with this power differential. But the Genji changes, not only are they really good quality of life changes, but they also have input in new ways that you can have new combos, and like the combos that previously existed now do even more. So just moving the fact that you're going from 28 damage on the shurikens to 30 damage has a lot of impacts. The two impacts that are probably going to be the most important for people is that right-click melee is now a one-shot. Previously, people would survive that, but if you catch somebody off guard, you can now get the one-shot without having to use your dash or anything like that. It's like right-click, you're going to be doing 180 damage, melee 210, they're done. And the other thing is that he now has the much easier ability to take out things like Torbjorn turrets and 250 HP heroes like Mei and Reaper, because his right-click dash, right-click melee combo now breaks 250 as well. So there's a ton of different combos for Genji whose breakpoints just barely shifted to be one better, or to use melee instead of dash, things like that. And then, of course, the actual reflect itself being able to be canceled means that he can do a lot more techs and a lot more mind games, especially in Blade.
I do think that's, like, for me, one of the huger ones is being able to cancel deflect. Because deflect is one of those abilities where you're really afraid for a Genji, you're really afraid to commit it at the wrong time.
Yes.
And because it's not just like you've wasted it, but now you're stuck in the animation. So
yeah,
it is really big. I didn't think that I would see. I'm also kind of against the concept of buffing Genji myself. I like the deflect changes, but the other things like increasing the damage, I never really thought was the issue, because we're once again getting to that point of like, we're going to buff heroes that don't need to be buffed versus trying to nerf sustain, because that was a real problem with Genji, was that, Brigitte with the armor packs make him very hard to get picks. In addition, and she can zone. Bap can heal a lot of this damage and heal himself. Moira can completely just win the 1v1 versus Genji, and because of all her sustain on top of the damage and the healing. So I never really felt like that was the issue, but I do feel that it's okay. Like, I won't turn down Genji buffs, but it feels to me like another problem of like, they're not addressing the actual problem. They're sort of just looking to increase power of characters. And then the Hanzo changes, like, I see people in chat comparing it to like fan the hammer. Like, Storm Arrow was was very lazy because it was closer to like a fan the hammer style ability. We just burst someone down, which I could see the sort of how that worked, but fan the hammer was a strictly close range ability, while Storm Arrow you could do from medium to even long range. And it's not like just like almost like a shotgun blast directly hitting you in the face. So I've not really felt that, but I do feel that it is uninspired, and once again is addressing the problem that really shouldn't be there, because they're looking to move Hanzo of like, we need Hanzo to do more damage. That's the problem with Hanzo, is it doesn't do enough damage. But the real issue is just Ashe just does so much damage right now that Hanzo is sort of irrelevant. So rather than putting Hanzo to do more damage, why don't we just either nerf Ashe damage to bring it more in line, or give Hanzo something unique to actually make him worth being run over Ashe, right? Mm-hmm. Rather, instead of him just being another shield break hero that can also be mobile, why don't we give him some other tools like rework, like scatter, like, or not rework scatter, but rework Storm Arrow to where it's some other type of utility, give him some other like buffs to where he's even more mobile. Like, there are options to move our characters in unique directions versus just like, I want every character to have a machine gun that immediately annihilates every tank that is not Orisa, because then also we create the same gameplay loop again of DPS are doing so much damage that now you must play Orisa and Sigma, because everyone takes so much damage. And then now we need more healing to heal said damage. And now we just go around and round. This circle continues, right?
Never ending cycle. Now, of the things that you were complaining about, one of the things about the patch that we haven't mentioned so far, we kind of started like the least notable and moved to the most notable. But the Moira changes actually didn't go through. So one of the things that you are complaining about, they stopped and they went back on. So previously they were going to increase her healing per second from 65 to 70. Now that's not a breakpoint or anything, of course, that's like a continuous. But along with that, the other change for Moira is the fact that her change would have reduced her damage from 50 to 40. So at the same time that the way that they were looking to go things with like letting the supports heal even more than previously,
and that didn't go live.
That did not go through.
Yeah,
so that's the important part, is that they suggested that it was going to happen during the experimental changes, and then they were like, no. So, but they also did not nerf her damage.
They also changed the Echo focus beam, which I feel is fine. I think reducing the range on Echo, it's so strong that's great.
Very strong.
I feel another very nonsensical, not nonsensical, but kind of meh change for Orisa, which is they increase the sound effect volume. So like, it's coming from further away, which is like, I mean, unless it's so incredibly loud and it's like Jeff Kaplan screaming in your ears like, halt, the halt's coming, like it's here, it's right here, like, and you could just like ignore it. I don't really think that this is really a solution to halt either, right? Because why do this? Why not just reduce the range of halt? Why not change some other factors?
Why, if you're going to be messing with volume, why not make Echo make more noise than a pin drop?
Yeah, you could also make Echo not be completely silent.
I just want a voice pack like the Gabe Newell one for Dota, where it's like Jeff Kaplan be like, halt.
And don't get me wrong, halt is very quiet, so I don't think the problem, I don't think, once again, it's not one of those things where I'm like, okay, this is dumb. I'm just like, but why not try to touch some other aspects of it? It's like when I saw the Roadhog change for a whole hog. It's like they increased the knockback for a whole hog, and it's like, yeah, it's like, okay.
We both went like, what?
I was like, it's just one of those changes where you say like, but why? Like, why? For what purpose? Like, now at least Orisa is actually far more in line, I think, with some of the issues with halt, where it is quiet. But I don't think that is the main issue. The main issue is not that halt is somehow some sort of stealth cloaked ball that zooms through the map and then suddenly catches you. The main issue is that if you're standing anywhere within LOS of Orisa that she can throw it, you get caught. And there's no way to deal with it. And it still goes with shields. Yeah, like, so I don't think being able to hear it will change anything. Like, that's like saying, like, if the sun were to explode into a supernova, but it's being really loud, I'd be like, well, helpful. Like, now I could definitely get away, right? But like, the answer is no, I can't, because it doesn't matter if I can hear it. It's still the
I
sun.
Just know that
exploding.
My impending doom is coming. I'm just cannot ignore it. No. So I know what you're saying. Can they not just put experimental? Like, I've been saying this about Orisa for, it's got to be over a year now. It's just like, stop letting halt go through shields. Please, but
it's just, and it's just like also another gameplay loop, right? Because like when you stop the ability of things to go through shields, it thus increases the strength of shields, like, because like then, or those abilities, because then it's like but also I guess I would say, or I guess it's the inverse, right? If you stop, because like I guess actually it should be the inverse. I logicked myself out of the correct answer here.
Just give him a second, chat. He'll unfuck himself.
We have to. This is like when you're
my one for the day.
Your what is it? Your earpods get like tangled, like the cords. And you have to sit there and like unruffle it a bit. Like I'm buffering. Yes, exactly. I'm buffering. No, what I meant to say was going through shields is very strong. And so when it's one of the few abilities that can go through shields, that further increases its strength, right? Yeah. But then also you run into the flip side of if nothing go through shields, then shields power are too strong because shields block everything.
It's also types of shields, right? One of the most powerful things for Orisa, if you're playing against like a Reinhardt, for example, is just being able to just like halt directly through the Reinhardt, right? You just put the orbit and it just slows the rate of time which they can actually pull towards you. Or with like a Winston, if you are playing dive, like Winston still has a shield, and halt through that can be very powerful. So, there's guess that just making its counter be more shields does enforce shields. The double shield meta is also hindered from the fact that the shields that exist for Reinhardt and Winston are also more adversely countered by that.
Mm-hmm. So overall, just the changes are decent, but I'm not a fan of the direction they're taking Hanzo, where they want him to just do more damage. Just more damage, please, more damage. I'm fine with Genji, but once again, didn't feel like anything other than the deflect change was necessary, because I felt like Genji was like pretty much the definition of a pretty balanced hero of like, you must hit your shots and you must be able to, and if anything, the ult is probably one of the bigger problems for Genji, where like you're a character based around ult, because you're not really getting picks a lot unless you're playing dive, but because of the sustain, you can't really play dive that much. So you're forced to like wait for like a lot of times the Nano Blade combo, which we actually saw this weekend, which we saw Sparkle get to play for the Paris Eternal versus Boston. And they played a lot of Genji. And even when we see Genji played before that, it's really focused on a Nano Blade combo almost exclusively, because most of the time his kit is not strong enough to keep up with the rest of the power and sustain creep that we've seen in Overwatch. But that doesn't mean his kit is weak. It rather just means everything else probably needs to be scaled back. I really feel like that's the better direction. But once again, we'll just have to see where it leads, because it could be great, like it could be great. I just don't think it will be.
And last thing about the match, yes, it's. I didn't really expect our opinions on Genji to be this different. I suppose. I am super excited about this.
Really, what's you have a stronger opinion in the opposite?
I don't have a strong opinion. So I had initial reaction as I was like, this seems logical, and I put no extra thought into it. I was like, I didn't prepare nearly as hard for this apparently as I should have. But I do think that the changes are good. I think that he's a well-designed character on paper, but given the situation with all the characters in their current state of balance, that in an ideal world, we change everything else to make Genji playable. He's well designed sort of thing. And yeah, in a perfect world, we change everything else to be like Genji. But that's not the situation. If we do like that, Genji's not going to see play for a very, very long time. And even if we're looking at Sparkle's play, like a lot of the things went into assisting Sparkle, and there's so many things that go into that sort of playstyle where he gets Mercy Pocket or Nano or Bongo or things like that. And I don't think that it's necessarily a poor character design to have things focused around their ultimates. There's like Sombra, for example, another character very focused around her ultimate. And I don't think that's necessarily or inherently a poor design choice. And yeah, I think that giving Genji a little bit of power outside of his ultimate will reduce it, where if the only kind of place where you do actually find Genji to be useful is where you like play for his ultimate and then support his ultimate really heavily, giving him more ability to succeed outside of his ultimate is also going to diversify the ways in which you can play him, where you no longer have to be just a blade farmer. Maybe you can be a little bit more of a backline assassin, like we used to see a lot earlier on in the like earlier seasons of Overwatch. So yeah,
I think you took it. I wasn't implying that I think. Well, first of all, I do also agree that building heroes around ults is not necessarily great design, but that's besides the point, because specifically about Genji, which is, I actually don't think that Genji is built around his blade from the ground up. I think it's just become that way because his kit is so weak in comparison.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah, like that's really how I feel about Genji, which is like my problem with it, and why also I didn't feel like he needed huge changes other than like maybe the cancel, like the deflect cancel changes, which I think is just a good quality of life. I think being able to cancel that is good. But I think it's more of the fact that I just don't like how they've moved it, where instead of adjusting the fact that Genji has become so centered around his blade because of the power creep, it's now we're just going to buff him even more so he's stronger overall, which is a solution, but not my ideal solution, right? Like,
fair enough.
Much better than anything else.
Fair enough. Good conversation. I like that.
Do we need damage numbers in like TF2? I would actually, that's besides the point, but I actually would like damage numbers. But really the problem with Overwatch when damage numbers generally is like, it's compared to other games, like for example, Purely Gates said TF2, there is so much overall more health and more sustain that I don't even know how a human being is going to accurately at this point keep track of damage. Like at this point, it would be like almost a non sequitur, because it'd be like, yeah, we have damage numbers. I hit Orisa for 400. Oh, I healed Orisa for 400 instantaneously right afterwards. Like,
So I used to play, I love it how ridiculous this can get, because before I played, this is going to be a bit of a tangent, but it's always a fun one. When I played EVE Online was a space MMO that had like multiple thousands of people fighting in it. And it got to the point where, especially in like 4,000 man fights, the only thing that mattered was alpha damage, where even if you were using these capital ships, which are like, there's absolutely no analogy to anything in Overwatch. But imagine if one hero in Overwatch actually had 10,000 HP and did like 4,000 DPS or something like that. That'd be like the equivalent of capital shot. But yeah, but since it wasn't limited to 6v6, at some point it was just like you had to one-shot the largest ships in the game, or else it didn't matter because there's so much healing. Even if you dealt like 9,900 damage to this target, just would be healed instantly. And so sometimes that does feel like the way that Overwatch is going, where especially if you're playing like these Sigma Orisa comps, sometimes at the very start, like it was Numlocked who kept posting videos of him like turning corners with Orisa, like dropping his shield disappearing, and him just evaporating as Orisa. Like sometimes you just die so quickly you don't even know. But at the same time, I'm sure everybody has had the experience of getting a target super low and having them just like barely survive and then shoot back to full. That is like, well, and you're all out of cooldowns and you die. So, if they don't balance things, like when you do allow so much healing to just take over the game, the really only thing that happens is that you require to burst people down, and there's no other way of winning the game. No other strategy is even remotely successful.
But that's why I'm personally against damage numbers as a quality of life feature, simply because the amount of numbers that would have to be on screen would make it immediately useless at points. And like would
especially if there were
even if they collated them to where it's just everything is just floating, like it shows you do 300 damage, but the healing there's so much healing anyways that it wouldn't really help you, at this point it doesn't add anything to the game that wouldn't already be there, that you can sort of just see with your eyes and ears when you're playing. So
one of the other things, just like continuing off of this sustained and like meta discussion about balance, one of the other things that I really enjoy about having really low healing amounts is that it makes engagements a lot more discreet, where everybody knows that if they keep fighting, somebody's going to die. So especially in dives, if it required you to like dive, scout, stage, dive, and then after the dive, you kind of like reset and take cover, and then there would have to be this period of time where even if it was like 5 to 10 seconds where you had to wait for like your Lucio or your Zen to heal up like 3 different targets, it took a while. And there was always this like really weird posturing where neither team was at full health or resources. They were waiting for health pools to come back, cooldowns to come up before you engage, but whoever could kind of stabilize or posture faster, you got this big advantage. But when you do have it where there's so much healing where you can fight continuously, or there is just like this very one long blended team fight where cooldowns come up continuously throughout the fight, like it really does all blur together and makes it less tactical in my opinion. So having things where, at least my opinion, I think the best like kind of healing and team fight situation is where even if both healers are on one target, if that target's being focused, they should die, sort of thing. It's like you should never be able to out heal focus fire. So at least that's my opinion, and it makes it a lot more interesting because then you have to care a lot more about positioning, a lot more about cover, a lot more about timings, retreats, stabilizing, all that fun stuff.
Summary of this conversation is this: we love Overwatch, but it's like a young child. It's annoying as fuck, but we still love it. From I'm_Justin. But I mean, that's a summary of anything related to Overwatch content or esports or any game, really. If you really, if we go down to its most axiomatic level, at the end of the day, if you're watching a conversation about any game, it's gonna be because someone dislikes or likes something about it, but we're still gonna keep liking it, for the future,
And Homeband has an interesting comment here. It says, Jayne hosts a tourney where healing is only 70% received. Now, I get this kind of comment quite a lot, where people are like, just run things with hero bans or run things with 70% healing. And the problem with that is that you're never going to have it's never going to serve as a suitable experiment, because what matters is how teams evolve on the long term to these kind of meta things, in that there's going to be a lot of habits that simply don't exist for teams that have never played with low healing. As if you have more healing, you will act and develop habits that work well in the world where you have more healing. But just because you artificially limit the healing for 50% doesn't mean that anybody at all knows the most effective way to play under those conditions. So even if you kind of put pros in that situation, they're going to play what they know, just like slightly modified. Nobody's going to have massive adjustments. There's not going to be new tactics or anything like that. It's just going to be like weird Overwatch.
It has to be a systematic change that lasts for a while to actually get any sort of meaningful data out of it.
It's like there has to be stakes. There
definitely has to be stakes. It's why like preseasons, like the community countdown stuff never really worked. To my great ire, you worked on the community countdown for last year, and I did with ZP2, and it really pissed me off. Now when Nate was like, "Fuck you, players! Like you're dumb," like I was like, well, maybe like. Maybe not that one, Nate, but also like I get where he was going for, because like it was really stupid. But the reality is there's no one is incentivized to try that sort of stuff unless there's stakes, and it's going to last for a long time. So you can't just be like, what if we run a show match where this happens? It's like, well, that really doesn't prove anything, because it's
anything at all
going to be the most similar meta they just played. It's going to be what's iterated.
Yeah, it's the same sort of situation where like. No, I'm not going to go on that rant. Just like even there's sometimes systemic shifts require over a year in order to come into action. Like it's happened in StarCraft, even GOATS itself. Like GOATS, people always forget that GOATS was not precipitated by a patch change that made GOATS viable. Like it took, there was quite a delay before GOATS was discovered to become powerful, and then all of the tactics shifted around GOATS, and then people countering GOATS. Like there was this whole thing where it kind of started in the lower ranks, and then all the good teams, notably Fusion University, was like, GOATS is stupid, played by bad teams, and it only works against bad teams who don't know how to counter it. And then they lost in the finals of a very important tournament, and everybody kind of went, huh. and that's where people started to really take it seriously. But you know, sometimes these changes take a long time, as it's super hard to convince people who are winning using a strategy that their strategy is not the best one, because they have no evidence to the contrary, sort of thing. And like we've talked about this before, but again, the cost benefit analysis of actually trying to innovate, especially on something completely novel, is not in anybody's favor. So
it's the exact same as Ashe too, where we didn't Ashe. There was adjustments to Ashe, obviously, that there were buffs that made her better, but now everyone's like, well, she's good.
Of this, right? Ashe is a great example of this. Of course, there were some buffs which tilted the scales more towards Ashe being viable, but you know, the combination of her being played because of hero bans gave people the motivation and the incentive to actually play her, which then figured out more niches where she was viable, which even when the hero bans were not in place, allowed these teams to play her more because they were more comfortable, more experienced, they knew more about it. But previously, if you had the ability to play McCree or had to play the Widowmaker, you would play either one of those and not Ashe. But now that she has kind of found her niche because of this artificial incentive, it's found its place more in the meta.
Have you guys seen Samito's latest video? Well, as far as I'm aware, Samito only rants in his video. His latest rant. So I didn't know Samito. I thought Samito was only asleep or ranting. There were only two fundamental parts to him.
But I thought he only put his rants on Twitter.
I mean, I don't know. He's the only one that I've seen actually exclusively use the Twitter video function to make like a message. I've never seen anyone else do that before, because Twitter video is actually the worst, just the worst. I would never want to use that to deliver anything other than bad news. So they have to sit there and wait for it to load, and then the video crashes, and then and then it's like 240 pixels. Like I would never use Twitter video in a million years. But that's besides the point. I mean, also, we need to look at mailbag, Jayne. By the way.
Well, you know what? The other thing that we didn't do, we also didn't do favorite 60-second recap.
Well, do we still have that queued? Do we still have it queued and ready?
Yeah, let's circle back. You guys didn't hear that, but God in our ear, Mr. Tech Producer. Yeah, do we want to do our 60-second recap?
Well, I mean, we need to.
Because people have been talking about Sparkle, and I have more Sparkle things in my 60-second favorite recap because it's not on a running show. So, yeah, let's do it. Welcome to another episode of your favorite 60-second recap. And by 60-second recap, I'm pretty sure this one's going to be 90-second because I got things to say. Sparkle had his highly anticipated debut performance against the Boston Uprising this past weekend, and he looked every bit as fantastic and flexible as the Paris Eternal fans could have possibly hoped for. Despite struggling a little bit with the May and admitting to some anxiety and unfamiliarity with playing with a mixed roster, Sparkle popped off on 5 different heroes to lead the Eternal to a 3-2 victory. No, you did not hear that wrong. Despite the difficult opponent, the Boston Uprising took the game to a full 5 maps, so things are certainly looking up for both of these teams. Or at least looking a lot better than a couple of the other teams in the league. The Paris-Boston match was the only close game this entire weekend, with the Los Angeles Valiant dominating the Washington Justice, the Toronto Defiant doing the same thing to the struggling Vancouver Titans despite being brought to 5 games less than a month ago, and probably most shockingly, the New York Excelsior absolutely dumpstered the Seoul Dynasty. Haxel and Nene looked great for New York, but just as notable was how shockingly bad the Dynasties played, especially Prophet. This is a complete reversal from how things looked during the Melee tournament, again, less than a month ago, where the Excelsior really struggled against the Chengdu Hunters, and the Seoul Dynasty almost took the whole tournament in a 7-game grand final series against the Shanghai Dragons. Oh, and did I mention that the Seoul Dynasty was not only shut out in maps, but also in points? They didn't take a single point throughout the series. This really only confirms that the Seoul Dynasty is the most tipsy-topsy kangaroo and clown show of a team I've ever seen, and winning against them matters just about as much as the points from whose line is it anyway. At the very least, since next week has the same hero pools as this week, we might finally be able to figure out just what the heck is going on with not just the Dynasty, but get a better feeling for team standings across the league.
Excellent. Excellent. I'm glad we fit that one in there so we could hear the clean narration of the favorite recap. Also, SI Not Found is in the chat. The winner of the Overwatch League Melee Frag Movie Contest.
Yes, congratulations to him.
There he is.
He didn't even think he was going to win. He thought that Lord Harris's video was better than his was. But it's the power of being popular, I suppose. You get voted for things you don't deserve.
That's how it works sometimes.
Yeah.
But it's called imposter syndrome, SI, and you're a god. So don't worry.
True.
About your
I
skills.
liked your video.
I liked your video too.
Yeah, no, I popped into SI's stream earlier. I like watching SI stream. His stream has been popping as well. He's been getting like 150 viewers lately. So good for him, not just on the video editing, but also on winning the video contest as well. So cool.
You know, the one thing that Sparkle didn't carry on though, Jayne, I will say as an aside, is May. His May was not good.
I said that.
Did you say that?
It said Eternal fans could have possibly hoped for, despite struggling a little bit with May.
You know what? It's the fact that that particular area of my brain just smoothed over, so it bounced right off. So that's the problem. I just had an immediate smooth on that one. So I must have passed through me. So that's
somebody says now that we've done the 60-second recap, we can start the show. Fantastic.
This may actually feed. It felt more like Nico's Reaper was the problem. I wasn't huge on that. I wasn't huge on either.
It could also just be like the team just sucks at that composition, but it's not like Sparkle is going to be the first flex DPS god that also just sucks at May. Yeah. There's a lot of people in this league who are really good DPS players who suck at May. I don't know what it is.
It's like the Lucio to Mercy conundrum.
It is.
There are lots of Lucio players that can play Mercy because the reality is they're just separate skill sets. They're just separate skill sets, and most importantly, they're separate ways of thinking about the game. You think about playing May way differently than you think about playing Genji. Like it's just entirely different play styles.
Yes. Yeah. Are there more different play styles?
I think they're almost like
the most different they could possibly be. Yeah.
Like entirely separate styles of play. So it's just like especially since they're also not even treated as like sort of how you used to even play May that much anyways, because now May is even more treated as like just an extension of like a tank comp than it is really a DPS hero. So it's like so much different than any other like flex DPS play. So it's just such is life, and that in the fact and the Overwatch ecosystem of heroes being good and not being good. And that's
you know what else we forgot to mention. I'm just gonna throw out the ROS at this point, but we also forget to mention that during the patch notes there was also priority requeue was introduced.
Oh, and also open queue. They added open queue to arcade, but that's not coming to rank for a little bit. But they added priority requeue. So all you DPS players, if your game ends, you get a priority queue at least, which is good. That's a good feature.
Yeah, I think people are going to be super happy about that because like there were a lot of ones, especially the higher ranks, where people, either win trade or dodge or things like that, going through like a 10-15 minute queue, be like, "Yay, we're playing," and have it canceled, and be like, "Oh." So it's a really really nice quality of life change that they put in. So explain priority queue. So it's pretty simple. If you were queuing for a role, you get in and then the game gets canceled. For example, somebody leaving the game, then you get put into a priority queue when you re-queue, so that your game, like you will be put into another ranked game faster. So,
and which is different than priority queue, and it pretty much is a priority queue though. It is just a priority queue. When your game ends, it just shows that you're going to go into a different queue than everyone else because your game ended early. So you'll find a new game faster, ideally.
Yep.
Based on the matchmaking works. So
this show has been total chaos as opposed to all of our other shows.
We're always we have gotten less structured as time has gone on because it's just like the wear and tear of being at home. Oh, yeah, but also, I feel like superimposed structure isn't necessarily good, right?
I mean,
it's always good.
If you watched our first episode of Contested compared to the episode today, you're like, wow, they've really gone off the farm.
Yeah, I think it fits. We've all agreed that it fits a little bit better. Just going more.
It's also just way nicer to interact with chat a ton. So off the break isn't happening today. Let's have a long one. Well, we do have. Speaking of long ones, my God, did we get an essay?
Oh, okay, go on.
Yeah, gotta always check me on those ones. You never know where I'm going. But yeah, we got one hell of an essay submitted to us. I love it when people just send us walls of text, because the worst part is I read them. Like, I'm always curious. No matter, I mean, I really don't want to say that, but no matter how long your comment is, like, I do read them. And we got a doozy of one. So we had 2 questions for people last week. One was about Closer, but the second one was about hero pools. Now, I am going to save you from...
We're going to condense it.
We're going to condense it.
We're going to condense it.
I actually... took this comment, put it into another document, went through it, reviewed it, highlighted like I'm your English teacher, and we have come down to 3 key points from this essay from Necrofear, who posted on YouTube. And he says, well, I'm just going to summarize. The first thing that I've highlighted that he says about hero pools is that hero pools, point 1 from Necrofear of this thesis, hero pools have been just as bad, if not worse in some cases, for flex players. His second point, flex players have learned to flex because they would rather take the easier matchup instead of playing into a mirror. And then in conclusion, beyond that, I take issue with the fact that so much of this burden of hero pools is being borne by the teams. In fact, I take issue with most of the league's decisions putting burdens on the teams rather than the league to make improvements. So, in summary, he doesn't like hero pools because we've been, like, one of the things that we've talking about in our shows and the narrative that we've been running about is that it hurts casual players, especially one tricks, because during the week where their hero is banned, they can't play. Necrofear thinks the opposite is true, and that it hurts casual players who flex quite a bit, especially the ones who are usually more agreeable, and play what they might not want to play in order for the betterment of the team. Because if, for example, they have to flex onto a Pharah and they're playing against a Pharah 1 trick, it's always going to be the 1 trick that has the advantage. And furthermore, he doesn't like the fact that these changes are putting extra burden onto the players in order to do a lot more work to be successful, instead of making it easier for players to actually just take the rules as they are and show how far they can take them. And that is Necrofear's essay summarized in 60 seconds.
That is the hero pool manifesto that we have gotten all of the because let me tell you, it's like how like a Super Smash Bros fan fiction is the longest piece of like fictional literature in the English language. Like, this is very long as well, and it's related to video games too.
I don't think it has the word count record. Like, we've definitely had doozies before, but this one was close.
It's always video game stuff that has really long, that's just extremely long works in the English language, because like that is a true fact, right? I just told you the longest fictional work of English is a Super Smash Bros fan fiction that is currently still ongoing, I think, or might have finished a couple years back.
What?
I can't remember. Yeah, it's called I can't remember the name of it now, but it is the longest work of fiction in the English language. And it was also written by a man that it wasn't, English was not their first language. So it helped him learn English to write the longest work of fiction in the English language. The Subspace Emissary. That's what it is. It's the Subspace Emissary.
Society has peaked. Just shut it down. Shut it down. We're done. We're done.
But, going away from that particular point though is the fact that I think hero pools don't exist in ranked anymore. So that solution has been implemented. And B, they've also added open queue. Where open queue, there's not even going to be 2-2-2 anymore. Moving forward, like not a strict 2-2-2 like roll lock for this newest update. It's going to be an arcade first and then going to like an actual live ranked system. But it was super popular in Korea, is what Jeff Kaplan said. And I do think that it's going to be an interesting experiment, but I'm very much on the opinion like no to open queue. To open queue. I made a very we have worked far too hard to get roll lock implemented to suddenly say no. Like, I will not tumble back into the dark ages of Overwatch because someone wants to play Roadhog and flank when they get mad.
It's kind of like going back to, why don't we just remove hero limit and go back to really the prehistoric, ancient,
I just simply won't have
Cambrian era.
I won't have it.
Yeah. I wouldn't play. I think the one argument, no matter what happens, I don't think that even if Blizzard pretends they're the same, I don't think the competitive community is going to treat open queue with the same legitimacy as anything else. I think this happens in League as well. There's another type of ladder. Is it like flex queue is what they call it or something? But it's people who play in that role. It's kind of like the same thing where people were getting like top 500 in arcade and they were like plat in ranked or something. Mm-hmm. Like the actual most legitimate ranked ladder is still going to be the main one that already currently exists. But I do view open queue, I think the way that I'm going to approach open queue is viewing it as a nice mix between Drunken Fridays and quick play and full try-hard competitive. So it's
yeah, and I think it's good that it's there, right? Because it's nice to have the outlet, but I don't want it to at all be a part of the conversation. As someone asked, the next step is get ranked for every possible combination. Yes, that we're gonna have permutation Overwatch, and it's going to be used to solve equations and mine crypto is going to be Overwatch. Like each combination of the hero pools is now used to mine new crypto, and Blizzard's going to be doing that to raise all sorts of funds. So that's going to be a perfect usage of the ranked system is going to be that one. We also had another mailbag question.
Yeah, you get the easy one. I got the essay, but
who was it? It was Daniel on YouTube. I'm assuming that wasn't his name. He was just Daniel who posted the question on YouTube. It was Daniel on YouTube, and the producer does confirm that. And it starts out with this. What was this in relation to? Oh, it's about Closer. Yeah, it's about Closer for the fuel. And it starts out saying, I agree with Avast. So already I know this is a good comment. I do know this is pretty good right off the bat. Closer has not been the problem, but he also hasn't been the solution. Having average players will lead to average performances. But if Paintbrush is above average and Sinatraa as well, the team will be capable of having above average performances. Paintbrush has a clear mechanical upgrade and is also a vocal player. Could he be the Punk of Boston? I don't, well, first of all, I'm going to hit with this extremely forehead take of average players leads to average performances, but if Paintbrush is above average and plays well, the team will be better. Extremely forehead take of if Paintbrush is in fact better than Closer, then the team will be better. That is the conclusion. That's true.
I think the most important thing is that he agrees with you, Avast.
He does. That is also the most important part. But
yeah,
I still disagree that Closer is somehow that Paintbrush is a clear mechanical.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest question mark of that sentence.
And it's not that I don't think that Paintbrush is bad mechanically. In fact, we haven't seen enough from the Overwatch League stage to definitively say he's better or worse, is my opinion. But Closer has a clear history as a support player, has played with London, now with Fuel, and I've never really felt like his mechanics have been objectively terrible. They haven't been abject bad. They haven't been amazing. You're not putting them up there with Moth or Masa or Slime, right? But I'm not saying his mechanics are bad. I think he has good moments. So overall, I still am not swayed by the Paintbrush argument, but overall, reasonable points. And you agree with me somehow while also disagreeing with me. So
he agrees with a distorted version of your argument.
Well done, Daniel from YouTube. Well done. You'll get the gold star for today.
We are going to need a call to action for next week. So we had a few potentials. We were going to ask people what they thought about the Sinatraa skin. We were going to ask what they thought about the Overwatch patch. We're also going to ask them about, the best contenders team, or taking who else from Doge is going to get picked up, or build the best contenders team that actually could be top 5. What are we going to ask this week?
Well, I want to know, did Genji need a buff?
Fair enough.
Did Genji actually need a buff, or was it just everything else needs to be adjusted? I think is a very important question. And then secondly, is an open queue at all necessary for the game? Does anyone need an open queue, or should it be something that's strictly an arcade relegated thing, or something that's very optional and not treated super competitively?
That open queue in Korea is crazy popular, right?
I know that's why they popped, but they poured it over. But our audience is mostly non-Korean, obviously. So I feel it would be good to sort of get a view on it, because I personally think open queue just would never work, because Western, especially North American matchmaking and European matchmaking is just an absolute zoo of people flinging poo at each other, while on average Korean matchmaking is far better. Not always. Far better.
All right, let's go with that. So first off, the question is, do you think Genji needed a buff? And if so, is the buff he got a good one? And second question, what do you think about open queue?
Well, seems like we already got our first responses. If there's no open queue, I'll have an aneurysm and collapse. So that's...
we are out here in the mission of saving lives. So let's get open queue out here stat.
Well, let us know what you think. If you will also have aneurysms and collapse in the YouTube comments, the video that's posted, or also you can find it on Reddit. I think we have. I think those are the two best options still.
Yeah.
Or going to the YouTube, going to the Team Envy YouTube and posting your responses below, or also sometimes we have the mailbags posted on Reddit.
Just because we are, the Reddit thread and the YouTube thread take a little bit to go up. We're probably within the next week or so going to set up an area on the Envy Discord where you can put those questions, where even if you don't catch us or you want to ask questions or fill out mailbag. So we're probably going to set up a little bit of a community Discord for you guys to be more interactive with us when we aren't live. But for now, we are going to keep to responding to the submissions primarily in the YouTube comment section and the Reddit thread, which is put up by Homebound11. So
I'll also work on integrating my own Discord too with the mailbag. So if you're one of my viewers or one of Jayne's viewers, who just happen to be in my Discord, we can make a channel for you, and we can more easily find it that way as well. So
perfect. Okay, well that's all we've got for you guys today. I went nice 20 minutes over time today. Look at us go.
Not bad.
Not bad at all. I like a little bit of the longer episode where we're not kind of rushed and can talk about random things and ring word of the day bells. But that's all we have for you today. Of course, the Overwatch League has returned, so we're back to 2 episodes a week. Our next episode is going to be this Thursday at 5 p.m. Central. This episode and all episodes are streamed live on Twitch, YouTube, and Twitter. So if you're watching on any of those platforms right now, I hope you guys enjoyed today's episode. If you're watching in the podcast format, I hope you had a great day, regardless what day it is for you. If you do want to support us, make sure to like, comment, subscribe on the live platforms, or give us a 5-star rating on either Apple Podcasts or Spotify. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed the episode. We'll see you Thursday at 5 p.m. Central. I'm Jayne. This is Avast. I hope you enjoyed today's episode of Contested.